Alhamdulillahi allazi lam yazal aliman qadiran wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa maulana Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. My brothers and sisters in Islam, a believer considers having certain human obligations towards not just the people around him, but to the society on the whole. So that responsibility is instrumental in everyone living in the awareness of Islamic moral values. The people are free to choose that lifestyle they like, but since they are unaware with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Islamic moral values, so the majority they may choose the irreligion. So many of them they may make mistakes or be unable to resolve their problem because they do not know the religious moral values. There may be millions of people leading unhappy and hopeless life because they are unfamiliar with the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in the Holy Qur'an. So the responsibility toward these masses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places on believers means they can teach them about Islamic moral values and then make their own choices, because since the believers are aware of the verses of the Holy Quran, they know how the problems that these people cannot resolve can be settled. So it is therefore a religious obligation for those who know to tell those who do not know. One of the verses of the Holy Quran, it tells us, so struggle in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are only answerable for yourself, and encourage the believers. It may be that Allah subhanahu will stimulate the force of the unbelievers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has greater force and greater power to punish. So being aware of the ways in which people can be rid of their troubles and yet deciding to keep these ways hidden and not to tell anyone about them is like having the prior knowledge of a disaster but not telling the people how to avoid it. If a disaster takes place and people die, then the person who never mentioned it has a heavy responsibility to bear. For that reason, the believers have a grave and great responsibility to all mankind. The seriousness of that responsibility is increased by believers being few in number and unbelievers making up a great part of the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, provoking the believers to fight. O Prophet, encourage the believers to struggle. If there are 20 of you who are steadfast, they will overcome 200. And if there are 100 of you, they will overcome 1,000 of those who are unbelievers, because they are people who do not understand. It is certain that in discharging their duty to preach the words, the believers can make many errors and exhibit the flaws stemming from, you can say, ignorance or error. They may say a wrong thing, produce an incorrect, or you can say interruption, or do something wrong from an intention to do good. So in that event, it is essential that they be warned and learn the truth, preaching the moral values of Islam and calling people to faith is a most important service, calling for the, you can say, the greatest care. Many people, they will decide whether or not to live by the moral values of Islam on the basis of the language, the attitudes and the behavior of the person describing them. If they love and trust the person describing religious moral values, then their hearts will begin warming towards the morals of Islam. That is why preaching a religious moral values is the most serious responsibility in the world. So believers who act with the aim of Islamic moral values becoming known to and lived by, more people need to be warned and trained to address people better every day, because such advice can overcome the deficiencies in a person's knowledge, manners, language, vocabulary, gestures, clothing, and you can say many other such matters, and be thus obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command regarding preparing believers. In the Holy Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals that as we prepare believers, we must also encourage them. That is why it is, you can say, of the greatest importance of the advice to be given to the constructive, encouraging, and you can say, and respectful manner. The person who is giving advice, he must be very pure. Advice can only be expected to benefit the other party if it is offered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala approval, with affection and compassion, and without involving earthly desires. But the criticism given out of envy, anger, hatred, they will be harsh and harmful. So instead of helping people, it will confuse them and leave them wondering what to do. It will reduce these people's favor for what they are doing and deprive them of the joy or the strength. So the other person should rather be encouraged. His good services, mentions, or you can say his well-intentioned activities appreciated, and the defect needing to be corrected should be, you can say, emphasized using the kindly words. And the solution to the resolving it should also be shown. A person who speaks incorrectly must be shown how he can speak properly. And if he uses inappropriate language, so he can be shown that what kind of language he should be using. So religion imposes a responsibility on the believers both to live virtuously and to remind people around them of those moral virtues. Yet it is not only the verbal expression that needs to be born in the mind when describing or reminding people of religious moral values. Because one can still remind people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the true faith through one's behavior, appearance, and expression. From that perspective, a believer must also be a role model for everyone with his appearance and behavior. What best benefits a Muslim, therefore, is someone who represents the religious moral values revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to aim to reflect the superior characteristics bestowed by those moral values and to earn as much of Allah's approvals as possible. They believe in Allah, in the last day, and enjoin the right and forbid the wrong, and compare in doing good. They are among the good people according to Surah Al Imran. So there are the various ways of preparing and encouraging believers. Encouraging someone to perform good works may perhaps lead us to enjoying the reward for that work in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So doing all we can to support believers and encouraging them to work harder and strive even further is an observance of which the believer will be rewarded in the hereafter.